about what I mean by being what I call an out of balance high. Remember, you don't want to pull your high areas down, but just know that if they're out there high by themselves, without some other things to balance them, it may create certain things. So let's take a look. For example, what do you think would happen if you're too high in self-regard and not very high in anything else around it? What would happen?
Overconfident.
Well, yeah, you get arrogant, cocky. You may not want anybody to tell you anything. You may just be very egotistical. If you've got that and nothing else, if you don't have the, say, empathy to balance it, or self-actualization. If anything is out by itself without things around it to balance, remember, you don't want to bring that down. You just want to bring some other things up to offset so that it doesn't become extreme. If you're too high in emotional self-awareness, what would that do? We've been talking about how you need to be high in emotional self-awareness, but if it's that by itself, what happens? Yes?
You will be too much. You will be too considerate for people.
Well, either are you too concerned about yourself? The situation we were just talking about.
Yeah.
You tend to be very self-absorbed. Oh, I feel this way, and here's why I feel this way, and I want to tell you why I feel this way, and all that. You've run into people like that. So you may be over-analytical of your feelings. You may spend too much time thinking about that. And it may just really wear other people out. They don't want to hear any more about how you feel about something. If you are too high in self-actualization, now we want to be high in self-actualization, but if you think you've been there, you've done that, you've done all you need to do, what's the effect? You don't think you need to grow anymore. If you're too high in that and not anything else, you may be a know-it-all. You may not be willing to accept other people's ideas. If you're too high in emotional expression, you may be melodramatic. You may be too dramatic. You may overreact to things. Remember, the emotional expression is your verbal and nonverbal showing. In other words, it's showing your emotions. The emotional self-awareness is feeling your emotions. The emotional expression is showing your emotions. And so if you show too much emotion, particularly at an inappropriate time, for example, I remember that when I was coming along, women were just beginning to really get a foothold in the workplace, in management positions. And I remember that one of the things that male coworkers really didn't like was when a woman wanted the big job and the big salary and the promotion, but then if things didn't, there was one woman I can remember in an office where I worked that when things didn't go well, then she wanted to cry. You know, she wanted to revert to being what we thought about is what did you say earlier, the emotional woman kind of thing. And their reaction was, you can't have it both ways. If you want the responsibility, you want the big office and the big promotion, then you can't turn around and cry when things don't go well. So that's kind of what that's about. Too much independence.
Stay away from everyone.
Well, yeah, you want to ask for help, and you don't like having a boss. You may have trouble with authority, right? Because you don't want anybody to tell you what to do. You may also have trouble with teams. Too high in assertiveness, blunt, lack of tact. You may not be a very good listener because you're always interested in getting your point across. How about too high in empathy? What does that do?
Too nice.
Too lenient.
Well, yeah, you can't separate feelings from issues. You can't say no to people, and you can't make tough decisions if you're managing people. You can't lay somebody off who's a bad performer if you're too high in empathy. Too high in social responsibility, you take on too much. You can't say no to people. You stay stressed out because you're the one who's always trying to do what's best for the team, and you want everybody else to do what's best for the team. So you may end up being the rule police or the value police. Everybody may not be. I know. Have you ever volunteered in a nonprofit organization where you've got a limited amount of time, and there are people in that organization that's their whole life. They spend all this time, and they don't understand why you can't spend as much time as they do. So it's that kind of thing. Too high in interpersonal relationship. What do you think would cause that? What would happen there? If you're too high in interpersonal relationships.
You just try to do your work.
You lose focus on what is important.
Okay, aren't you lose focus, but what else? Interpersonal relations, you want what?
People that like
You want people to like you. You want to be around them all the time. You may have trouble working alone. You're too high in interpersonal relations and not high enough in some other things. You may be the person who, because you want to connect with people, you provide too much information. You talk about things that make people uncomfortable. You intrude into their space. You really intrude into their privacy by telling them things about yourself. Too high in reality testing. Now, I told you about an example about someone who was too low in reality testing. But what about somebody who's too high?
cynical.
Too unconcerned. Like, just when you see things just as it is, you don't try to think of others. Really.
Good for you. Good for you. You're always the. Do you understand the term devil's advocate? Mm-hmm. Well, but that didn't work last time. Or I know everybody's really excited about this project, but I can tell you why it's not going to work. Or, we did this last year and it was a colossal failure. So you're always the one with the yes but or the bad news. And so you may not be, because you're so high in reality testing, you don't think out of the box. You don't fantasize about anything. And so everything has got to be, okay, this is concretely the way it is. And so you may kill others' creative ideas. Because if you're just real high in reality testing and not anything else, you may end up being a little cynical. Oh yeah, we tried that. And I can tell you 5 reasons that's not going to work. Too high in flexibility. Now remember, what's flexibility? That has to do with what? Adapting to change. Well, if you're too high in it, what happens? Well, you're just like the wind. You don't take a stand on anything. Anybody can sway you. That's a good idea. Oh, well, that's a good idea too. So we'll do that. So you end up being real scattered because whatever somebody wants to do is okay with you. Or you may be one of these people that just gets very bored very easily, and you just want to change for change's sake. Mm-hmm. If you're really high in flexibility, and perhaps not high in, say, problem solving or reality testing, then, oh yeah, let's do it. I'm tired of doing it this way. Let's just do it another way just for the sake of doing it. So being too high in flexibility can create that. So as you look at your own scale, is there anything that jumps way out? Or are there things that you just want to put a little star by and say, yeah, that's an area that it may be a little bit out there by itself, and I need to be aware that may be the consequences of being too high in that particular area. Okay, what about being too high in stress tolerance? We talked about that. What does it create?
You don't consider others situations.
Well, you don't understand. You may seem too relaxed. I think you said something about that you're too relaxed in the face. You may not be aware that you're overloaded. That's what you said. And may not be sympathetic of others' stress levels, which may not be what yours are. So that could be what if you're too high in impulse control? Well, we know that too much, if you're low in impulse control, you lose your temper, you get mad, you are impatient. But if you're too high, you may not be spontaneous enough. You may overanalyze everything. You may delay your impulse to the point that you can't relax and have a good time. okay, I don't want to go after work to do such and such, it's not on my calendar, you know, you just can't. So you end up being a little bit aloof. You're not somebody that people feel like they can really connect with. What if you're too high in optimism? Yes, absolutely. Have you ever heard the term Pollyanna? Anybody ever heard about Pollyanna? It's been a long time since that was read. It was a movie, but this goes back to the 19th century. There was a story, I think it was an English author, about this little girl named Pollyanna. Everything awful happened to her, and she just stayed happy and optimistic through it all. And so it actually became a term that you would say somebody's a Pollyanna, meaning that they just, it doesn't matter, the building's on fire, and she's saying, well, isn't it nice and warm? They go too far to the extreme of trying to see the bright side of things where there may not be a bright side. And so the term is, well, she's just or he's, you can use it about men as well, that person's just a Pollyanna. They're unrealistically optimistic. And they sometimes appear not to be very serious about things. You can even be too high in happiness and that you seem unrealistic. So now let's look at some issues with interrelationships and see if you can tell me what some of these might cause. What if your self-regard is really high? Remember, you really feel good about yourself, but your independence is low. What do you think that combination would produce? You really think a lot about yourself. Your independence is low. What would that come? Yes?
I think you have problem dealing with your boss, because like if your independence is low, you tend to be, like you have to be told things to do them.
Yes.
And
yes.
you consider, at the same time you consider yourself too high, then it conflicts, with what the boss is telling you about hard time trying to do them.
It absolutely does. Is that you think you're wonderful, but you need everybody else to think so too. So you can be high maintenance. Someone whose self-regard is really high and independence is low because you need constant validation. I lead the business communication program in the Department of Marketing, and we have some part-time instructors. And I've got one particular instructor who, he's a part-timer, used to work for a large company. He teaches one class, undergraduate class, and every time he gets an email from a student telling him how wonderful he is, he sends it to me. And so finally I told him one day, I was very frustrated, I told him he really did need a lot of validation. And he was highly insulted that he didn't need validation, but of course he does. And so for a couple of weeks he didn't send me any more emails, but now he's back on it. Your self-regard is high, your assertiveness is high, and your empathy is low. Yes?
We come off as being arrogant.
And not only that, you're going to remember, what is assertiveness? I'm going to say what I think. Low empathy, I'm going to say what I think even if it hurts your feelings. Yes, absolutely. So this is the person who can come across as a real bully, and they'll seek to get their own way without, remember, assertiveness is we strive to get our ideas out there. We want what we say to be accepted. And so if your assertiveness is high and your self-regard's high, you're going to think about yourself and what you want more than you're going to think about what others want, or even how they may feel about what you're saying to them. If your emotional self-awareness is high and your impulse control is low, what would that do? Remember, you're very aware of how you're feeling. You raising your hand?
Yeah.
Okay.
You make some rash decisions and later
Yes. Are you tell too much?
Yeah.
Oh, let me tell you why I feel this way. And I have another person who works on my team who told me the other day that she was addicted to talking. She had said some things that I thought were a little bit inappropriate. No, I can't help it. I'm addicted to talking. You may know people like that. Just interestingly, do you know, are we recording this? Don't let just anybody see it. Would it surprise you to know that women talk more than men? Is that a shock to anybody? About 3 times as much in a given day, according to the study was done in LA. In fact, you know, I don't think I've ever in my life known a man who said, you know, I wish my wife would talk more. Or I wish my girlfriend would talk more. You know, I don't think I've ever heard that. People who are emotionally self-aware may be melodramatic if they don't have impulse control, and they really can be just downright scary. You've known people like that. They want to tell you too much, and they really kind of make you feel uncomfortable. Emotional self-awareness is low. Interpersonal relations are low. And a lot of times, remember, if your emotional self-awareness is low, you may struggle a little bit because it's hard for you to read other people. Remember, we talked about how the more you're able to read yourself, the more you can read others. What do you think that would create?
Someone who can't create any relationships. Right?
I think that's probably right, because you misread others and you can't always understand why you're reacting to people the way that you are. Remember that any area where you're low, you've got some great strategies for working on that. You've got this report gives you some excellent ideas about where to start, and we're going to look at that in just a couple of minutes. Self-regard is low, empathy is high, social responsibility is high.
Oh, so somebody who is always giving into others.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to others. Yeah.
Absolutely. You're taking on way too much. You're the one who's just the trooper. Everybody can depend on you. And you feel obligated to put other people first, even though you really need to be taking care of yourself. Because remember, it's all about balance, about balancing the intrapersonal and the interpersonal. Independence is low, interpersonal relationships high. Your independence is already low, which means you need to get validation, you need to be around people. Now you add to that, your interpersonal relations is high, which means you need to be around people and you don't want to be by yourself. And so what you've got is an extreme situation here of people who the combination, you just really do not like being alone, and you may end up being a very clingy kind of person. And so it's just there are times when, and this is not only physical independence, meaning that you don't want to have to work in an office by yourself. It's also emotional independence. Can you make decisions on your own, or do you need to have someone else validate it? I was just talking with someone at break. I used to have a friend who he and his wife were very close friends of mine before they moved away. And he was we worked in the same office building for a while. And he would come in my office and he'd say, I need your advice on something. And he usually had some problem. Sometimes it was financial, and sometimes it was with one of his kids and so forth. And so I would spend a lot of time trying to formulate an answer and give him what I thought was a thoughtful response. And I realized that he never took my advice. He never, or he would just say, well, I'm going to do such and such, which was maybe directly opposite what I had suggested that he do. And I finally realized he did not want advice. He wanted validation. Thanks.
It's okay.
It's okay, that's what.
Nothing.
This mouse doesn't have a mouse pad. It's not real responsive. So he just wanted validation. He just wanted me to say, oh yeah, that's great, whatever you decided is wonderful. Assertiveness is high, impulse control is low. We all know those people. Well, this is, the anger management issue is somebody's very aggressive, takes things out on other people because they're very assertive and they don't know when not to do that. Assertiveness is high, flexibility is low. Think about that one. That's kind of an interesting one. Remember, yes.
Not willing to change the view.
And you're very assertive about it. Yes, you're rigid. And you are actively rigid. You're very inflexible. Not only do you not want to change, you're going to make sure everybody knows you're not going to change. Absolutely. Assertiveness is low. Social responsibility is high.
One of those people that don't get things done?
Well, you let everybody push you around. Because you're absolutely right. You can't say no to anybody because you feel this huge obligation to the group, whatever that group may be, and you're not being very assertive, or you're not pushing your own ideas forward. How about this one? Impulse control is high and flexibility is low. You're buttoned up real tight. You may be too rigid because you don't express yourself. Now remember, this is a little different from the low flexibility and high assertiveness. The high assertiveness and low flexibility, you're very pushy about the fact you're not going to change. In this case, you may not talk about it. Your impulse control is very high, so you may not say a lot about it, but you just aren't responsive. This would be the person, are you familiar with the term passive aggressive?
Yes.
This would be the passive aggressive person. They're not ever going to tell you straight out that they're not going to support you or do what you say, but they're not. Impulse control is low. Reality testing is low.
You will be taking decisions and come back on their course. You have the wrong perception and react right away.
That's right. You're losing your temper about the wrong things because you don't know what the reality is, and yet you're very low impulse control. So you're very impulsive, and you're jumping to conclusions, and your conclusions may be wrong. You may have flown off the handle and made yourself look really, really ridiculous because the thing that you're upset about wasn't the reality at all. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. You're an expert on this now, so I'm going to give you some scenarios to work on. And I would say get in groups of 2 or 3, just whoever's close by. You've got some scenarios, and see if you can figure out what's the EQ or the lack of in these various areas. So get in little groups of 2 or 3 and look at each one of the scenarios. Each one gets one. Keep passing them on down, and then you can get to the end of the row, pass them behind you.
Oh, he needs it. If you want to go.
Need a little more? Yeah. Okay. Let's see one. Okay. Yeah, it's one for each person. Okay. Everybody got one? I made extras. I think I made 30. Yeah, so I want you to talk to each other about each one. Yeah, okay, so if you will, and just I'm going to give you about 20 minutes, 20 to 25 minutes. So talk about these in some depth, that you can look at your own reports to get some answers and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, she does.
Yes, she does. I took it as some.
Yeah, that's another part about that. She
So she has no
Needed custom specification
Right. Yeah, she's very selfish. So.
Yeah, but what on here is contributing
Yes,
to the
yeah. Right. Right. That, yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I was just making sure.
Yeah.
So that's
Right. Because she didn't want to, tell them before the end of the process.
Could also be
And maybe low empathy. She didn't know how. She didn't care how other people felt.
Yes.
Well, interpersonal, and then that's the big category, the interpersonal relationships, empathy, and social responsibility. So we could say just her personal, all of her skills, relationships, empathy. I know it's
self-restraint.
So just tell her that she needs to think about the other people on the team. Those people considerate of others. That's really
What you got?
What do you want to do?
right. Yeah, so just to be more considerate of others.
Yeah, how do we get it?
That would be the interpersonal relationships and empathy.
She might leave, but other than
Okay. Yes, we are.
Low empathy, I think.
to make her understand.
I don't know, I mean, it sounds like she's focused on
So first of all, low
His temper and his life.
Just threatening her. Like, if you don't go, we're gonna kick you out. To make her understand. Yeah.
Well, I feel like straightforward.
reality testing objectives.
I feel like when it's like when it's low and trying one of those.
Right.
That's the
So low reality testing, that means that you, what does that mean again?
he can be quite abusive to anyone who is trying to get this grasp. When it's over, he acts as though nothing has happened. He never apologizes. But he keeps factors in the situation low in his age. Let me be high with it's the same empathy again.
Right, low income. I know, it's emotional expression,
not like
or no, assertiveness, high assertiveness.
This is temporal. It says, what if
Because he's always telling people, like expressing his feelings on other people, I guess a little too much, because if you're assertive, you're always just
Does it reflect the fact that people
well, that's part of the low empathy, because he doesn't think about how other people feel. Oh, what maybe? Oh, yes,
Still,
right. Well, that's part of the low impulse control. Yeah, we're gonna.
Does it become hard? Okay, so what about access to
So the first thing that came to my mind was that I'm worried that he goes to let the other members of the team
Positive advice.
Right.
Just it's up to me.
Right. So he's just not going to let that bother him that people are making his decisions for him. So he's not going to care. Right.
Well, what do you know he's doing? Definitely low impulse control. Probably low in interpersonal. He doesn't care if he hurts somebody's feelings. Very high assertiveness. I don't know whether he's high in self-regard or not, because a lot of people who are bullies
To let the other team members know
really
that
kind of insecure.
he is right.
They may not be emotionally self-aware.
That's true, but
But he's, but I think definitely assertive, low impulse control, low empathy, you know those for sure. And then you can kind of wander around the edges about what some of the others might be.
High flexibility, low in independence.
I worry about the manager.
I will respond by micromanaging, keeping on. Of course, you may not like that.
Oh yeah.
I said I think that he will let other team members make his decisions for him, and that he will not care about that.
The deadline. The project will never get done.
That's interesting, you highlighted the areas.
That's it. I know mine are going
Oh wait, stress probably slightly lower. Oh, so he'll get very worried that he can't tolerate stress. That well, okay, yeah, I just noticed that again. So yeah, so when other people are kind of making decisions for him, he get worried about how he feels he can't take it. Right. Right. Or he may just give up and just let them take it.
Let them try to decision making. Just like, okay, they're going this direction. It seems like he has trouble saying
Right. Right.
That's why
he just
Is to be aware of your own emotions, to kind of think about it. If you feel yourself getting emotional, stop and think, why am I feeling this way? What caused it, and what kind of emotion am I feeling? And that can really help. A lot of that's going to be
training how if you have many ideas, how to consolidate it.
That's why you work with Ari, yeah, that's what Ari. Used to have terrible time.
Yeah, that's good.
You can't handle issues.
And also high implications.
She really needs that validation. She really needs not very realistic. She doesn't realize she's missing her deadline.
Right. So, well, yeah. So
I'd say low stress. Probably low stress tolerance.
So low in reality.
I think she's low in reality. She doesn't realize she's going to lose her job if she doesn't start doing her own work.
Well, so she also said that independence. She said that.
I don't think it's a low certain issue. Also,
But I'll be a good thing. Oh, well, she could just she could be more assertive and just tell the people that she has things that she needs to do. She can't help them right now.
She has high empathy. High empathy. And interpersonal relationships.
More sort of intel for coworkers. Oh, so yeah, you're right. You're right. Independence.
When you're overwhelmed,
It's a really good. So just say you are independent.
It's easier to break up the small issues.
Yes.
You don't want to decrease that. You don't want to take feedback.
You don't want to decrease the influence. You want to embrace some things that what you said.
She said that, you know,
people wouldn't ever talk to somebody like that.
that's good.
But they could. It's major. Yeah, I guess the great
Greek letters, I think, quite
But optimistic means positive attitude.
doesn't really say that she she takes off her stuff. She gets it.
Last one.
I want to talk about the project without having to hear what he has to say, but then later on it says meetings turn into social events, so maybe they're not talking about the project, maybe just
always the one element over is and high social
take it seriously. High independence.
high empathy.
The attribute of making that joke.
Oh, high.
What she's ready to take the food that's you're very challenged with that.
There's some low.
The whole thing. She was still
now don't have time to. Yeah, she needs some.
but she needs also be able to say no.
The fact that
Are you just about done? Okay. How are we doing? Are you working on the last one?
Yes.
Okay.
But I'm sure if they also ask her like 10 steps, so she needs to be able to take them. Because she already accepted it. She's not told to do it. She already taken that.
Bring it down. You just want to bring some other stuff up. Her empathy is probably out of control. So is her. She does not need herself. She likes that validation. She's not very independent.
You know what I was thinking, right? Yeah. Okay, let's
it's fine with you.
Maybe we should go to
yeah, come back there. Think about it. But you do want to.
And it says that other people think he's fine, what's going on, but he really isn't. I mean, that his stress tolerance is low because he says he's losing his patience, so he's impatient.
But then it's not obvious. Yeah, if you work first, they have time to
They can't see that.
I went back and opened it in a different.
With high independence is to get satisfaction from your self-reliance, you're doing it yourself.
Mine was a week thing.
I remember my mother telling me that when I was taking one of my first complete sentence, one of my complete sentences, my first time I put words together, which was by myself. I wouldn't do it by myself. Even though I probably could, that's what I was doing.
Thank you. Right, so.
I thought it was a way on
He hasn't said anything to the team, and they all think from these fine, he has no emotional expression.
Yeah.
Oh, the interpersonal relationships. He's not communicating with the other team members.
Yeah, got you scheduled. Okay, even if you're not finished with us, so that I can keep you on schedule and let you out in time to catch your breath before the next session. What about number one? What's the first one? And I want you to know that this was based, that I changed a few things, but this was based on an actual situation that I ran into as working with one of the teams in the professional MBA program. I changed it and made it something else. And in fact, it involved a man rather than a woman. But this actually happened. This kind of thing actually happened. You can just imagine how the team felt about him. What's wrong with her in this situation? Yes?
We think she has a little empathy.
Definitely low empathy. And what goes with empathy? What's the other one? Well, but probably the social responsibility as well, because remember, social responsibility is feeling a sense of obligation to the group. And so I would say probably all the interpersonal areas are fairly low with her. Okay, what else? What else do you think? Pardon?
High flexibility.
Yeah, she's very flexible, isn't she? You know, she was going to do one thing, and then the boss said, let's do something else, and oh, okay. So I would say certainly high flexibility. Anything else? Probably not. I don't know about her self-awareness, but
She didn't know that it would bother them.
right. Well, now remember, that's emotional self-awareness are your own emotions. The empathy is understanding that it would bother somebody else. So it's the empathy would probably be below. What else might be low? We definitely empathy. I'd say independence is pretty low. She lets herself be told what to do. She, for all we know, she could have told the boss, "Look, I've got this obligation. I'm committed to working with the team," and the boss could have said, "Fine, go the next day, or take a late flight, or whatever." So we don't. She obviously very flexible, easy for her to change. Very little regard for other people. So all of that is it creates a pretty toxic situation that she's not going to win friends and influence people that way. So if you were her boss, or if you were coaching her, let's say you're not her boss, if you were coaching her, what would be some things that you would tell her to do?
I'd ask her to improve her empathy.
Right, and help her to understand, and her social responsibility, help her to understand the consequences of that kind of behavior. If that continues, she's not going to have any friends, she's not going to have any allies. When she needs to call on other people to get them to help her out, there's going to be nobody there. They're not going to be, they will let her sink. They will not support her. So she needs to understand the consequences of her behavior and see why she needs to grow in that area. What about the boss?
Yes, a very low score.
Certainly low impulse control.
High self-regard?
Maybe, maybe not. I think some bullies are very insecure, or they certainly are not emotionally very self-aware. But they just lose it. They're maybe even over the wrong things, like the guy I was telling you about who wanted to cut out the microwaving because he was embarrassed. And instead of just saying, oh gosh, guys, I'm really embarrassed. I didn't realize that the smells came into the conference room like this. Let me go tell them to stop what they're doing. That would have been fine. But he was embarrassed and he let it translate into anger. And that is an example of low emotional self-awareness. Is you're feeling one thing, but you think it's another, and you act in accordance with what you think it is rather than what it really is. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. What else about the boss, the bully boss?
High assertiveness.
Very high assertiveness. Obvious. If he were low assertiveness, he probably would not attack somebody. He'd be passive aggressive. What'd you start to say? Oh, definitely low empathy. He doesn't care whose feelings he hurts.
Low stress tolerance?
Yes, probably so. Yes, the impulse control, and he may be reacting because of stress. Very good. Okay. What about number 3? This is Ari. Poor Ari. I worry about Ari's manager who gave him this job.
I've said that I think he will let other team members make his decisions for him and that he won't even care.
Of course.
Yeah.
And not only that, it will be like a ship without a rudder. This project will flounder because everybody with a new idea, okay, that's the direction we're going. So it'll be the direction du jour rather than having a clear path that you're going to follow. And yes, what would you do?
What would I do? Well, I would help him to understand that it needs to be more assertive, help him understand that even though sometimes not every decision you make will be something everyone would like, but if you feel like it's something that would help you get to your goal, then you should probably believe in it and at least pitch it to the other team members. And
to try to coach him. The problem is that your theory is absolutely right, but if you tell a non-assertive person to be more assertive, it's kind of an exercise in futility because that's their problem. They're not. What you would probably need to do is give him steps 1, 2, 3. What do you mean by being more assertive? Okay. And kind of coach him with step by step what he needs to do. Did you have any of that?
I was going to say that, and we know that he has low stress tolerance, so it might be easier if the manager, instead of just giving the person the project, okay, here, do this, say about, okay, in 2 weeks I want you to show me this, then in 3 weeks this, 4 weeks this, break it down to smaller pieces so that instead of the person who's not very assertive having this project due in 2 months and not having to cram and be highly stressed towards the end because have so much to do so little time, break it up so that it'll be less stressful for the individual, make it easier. We're trying to stay away from micromanaging, but that's what you may have to end up doing.
I think you're going to have to do it. I think you're absolutely right. I think you're going to have to do some micromanaging. You got him into this, the manager got him into this, and you're almost going to have to be the shadow project leader. You're going to, yes.
Assign an assistant manager.
You could do that, except this person is so unassertive, the assistant's going to take over. He'll be the project lead before it's over. I think you're going to just have to almost like at the end of every day, okay, let's have let's have a checkpoint. Like, how did we do today? What do we need to do tomorrow? You're really going to have to hold his hand. If you really want this as a leadership development, if you decided you made a mistake and don't care, you can always take the project away from him, but that would certainly have some negative effects. So now that you've got him into it, if you can help step by step, he may actually grow in this project. Yes.
And send him to Dr. Lumford.
Send him to me. I'll coach him. Not necessarily. I'm not sure that I could help him in that, but he needs to be aware of these things. Yes, sir.
Yeah, maybe you need clear instructions and follow them up with like periodic reports. You know, like he has to tell you what they're doing like all the time.
Yes, make him accountable, and if he finds if he comes to you and he says, well, Julius had a great idea today, and we're going to kind of go with that. What would you say to him as the manager? I'm sure Julius has a great idea, but we had already decided we're going to do this, this, and this. And so, trying to kind of keep bringing him back. Okay, what about Malika?
She has a very high social responsibility.
She has very high social responsibility.
Low stress tolerance.
Low stress tolerance. What else?
High optimism.
What's that? High empathy.
High optimism.
High optimism.
Low assertiveness.
Low assertiveness. What else? Oh, I think she has high social responsibility. Remember, social responsibility is wanting to do things for other people and being part of the group. So she's probably high in social responsibility.
Low stress tolerance. But she misses a deadline.
Well, that's right. So she's thinking more about that group than she is herself.
Yeah.
So she's probably, I would say her self-actualization is low. She's not, she's really not achieving her goals. All she's doing is just is taking care of everybody else because they say, oh, Malika, you're wonderful. Oh, we couldn't do without you. Thank you, thank you. So she's high in interpersonal relations, low in independence. She needs that validation that we were talking about.
What about the stress tolerance? Is it high or low?
I would say if she gets freaked out and stressed out, it's low. It's probably low. If she's frazzled all the time. What's that? I think you're right, Julius. I think her reality testing is low. I don't think she knows she's going to lose her job. And just look at it. Okay, she's making everybody else look good. She's missing all of her deadlines. I would say there's definitely a reality testing issue here. Good. So you're her boss. What are you going to do? You're going to give her a reality check. You're going to sit down and talk to her and explain exactly what's going on here. The last one, then we'll hurry through that. The last one. Now, who's the last? What's his name?
Paul.
Paul. Okay. What about Paul? Did I call him? I change these names all the time, and I don't know why I decided it would be Paul. I didn't change it, but Paul and Duncan are the same person. A little multiple personality here. Sometimes he's Paul, sometimes he's Duncan, but he's okay. What do you think's going on there?
The assertiveness.
High impulse control.
All right, he's got very high impulse control because he doesn't say anything to them about it.
High independence.
Low assertiveness probably, but he's very dissatisfied.
High independence.
Passive aggressive.
He's passive aggressive, high independence. He wants to do it by himself. He doesn't want to work with anybody. And low interpersonal, probably low social responsibility. And remember, we're seeing the team through his eyes. It may not be as bad as he's saying. He may think that any interaction, any interpersonal, getting, bonding, talking, socializing, he may think any of that's a waste of time. So we can't assume that the team is as bad as he says it is. That's his perception.
Okay, so what would you say is his score on reality testing?
It's probably, I don't know that reality, it may be a little low, or it may be that he's just so antisocial, that he just doesn't have much social responsibility. He thinks that anything is too much, yes.
Just as he says that means seem turns to social events. How can you really get confused over?
Well, that's he may feel like if somebody brings cookies, that's turning it into a social event. Or it may be the truth may be somewhere in between. And that's what it usually is. There's his view and their view, and the truth is really in between. Perhaps they are socializing too much, but he doesn't want them to socialize at all. And so he might be a good balance, a check and balance for them if he were more assertive and if he would say, hey guys, let's do our meeting so the first 15 minutes or the last 15 minutes we socialize and have refreshments. The rest of the time we really focus on what we're doing. He could be very useful to that team. Instead, he's just pouting about it. He's just unhappy. He just wants to be all bothered. So I would say that's a very good a very good observation that you have, because it may be too social. Okay, so you kind of get the idea of how it goes. I'm going to skip this because we're running out of time. I just did want to show you one thing. In fact, one more thing, and then we'll be one more thing about getting to. You've got some great suggestions. These were just some I was going to go over, but here's. Here's what I wanted to sort of wrap all this up with. If you notice in the back, you've got a self-development worksheet. I would suggest that you start with anything that is in the intrapersonal realm. If you've got an area where you're low, that's either in self-perception or self-expression, I would pick that area to start to work on. And your report gives you some specific things to do. And the reason that I say you ought to start in that area is because that affects how we relate to other people. The more we are emotionally self-aware, the more that we're able to express our emotions in a healthy way, the more that we're able to assert ourselves and all of those things, those impact our ability to work productively with other people. So that's the reason I would start there. And I hope that after you have a chance to read over this, you'll decide the area that you want to work on and start growing there. Here's what's going on here today that I'd like to just bring it back to your thoughts. We all carry around a self-concept. When you walked in here today, you had a self-concept. You had a concept that says, this is who I am, and this is what I do, and this is what I'm good at, and so forth. We all have that, and that's healthy. During our lives, events happen. Some of them we don't have any control over. Some of them are pretty horrible. It can be an illness. It can be the loss of a family member, the death of a parent. It can be a divorce. It can be losing a job. It can be all kinds of things. When these events happen, it can be the victim of a natural disaster, where you lost everything in a tornado, for example. When those things happen, what do we do? What do we tend to do?
Some people shut down and like stay to themselves.
Well, I'm not talking about so much of our overt or our outward appearance. What does it make us do? Let's say you were in a car accident. You were in the hospital for a couple of weeks. What do you think about when you're in the hospital?
Be more careful.
Well, yeah, you start to evaluate yourself. You start self-examination. That's what I'm getting at. It's when we go through one of these events, we go through self-examination.
Yeah.
What's really important? What is it that I need to pay more attention to? You know, what I remember someone who actually ate some bad jalapeno peppers and almost died because they were they had been shipped in and had some sort of E. coli and all of his systems shut down. He was a person who teaches workshops, and he almost died, and in fact they'd written him off, and he managed to recover. And he said, you know what, after that happened, I don't sweat the small stuff anymore after having that brush with death. So we examine ourselves, and then we get some insights. Wow, now I see this, or I'm going to do more of this, or I'm going to spend more time with my family. So we go into new personal expectations. We say, okay, from now on, here's what I'm going to do. And what that does is that creates a development. We start to develop, and we end up with a new and improved self-concept. What we've been through with something like this is the same cycle, but it's pain-free. It's like these events that happen in our lives, except it doesn't hurt. It's not anything that costs us anything. It doesn't make us have to take time off from work. We don't have to grieve over losing somebody. And yet you go through the same kind of cycle that you do when these life events happen. And so that's why something like this is so valuable, is that you're able to grow just like if something bad happened or something significant that you didn't have any control over. You can grow and develop just like if you had to learn in the school of hard knocks, or those little life lessons that we have to learn sometime. So I hope that you will think of it this way. You're going to grow in your emotional intelligence whether you do anything with this or not. That's going to happen. That's going to just be part of your maturity and your growth. But you can actually speed up the process and give yourself a competitive advantage if you use some of these principles and start learning and working on it now. So I hope you will look at the self-development little worksheet and spend a little time deciding where you particularly want to grow right now. I've really enjoyed being with you. You are a wonderful group. Thank you for being so engaged. I think we're going to have a picture taken together, and I want to really tell you how much I admire you and your accomplishments, and I wish you the very, very best. Thank you.
Can we get a group picture? Does anybody want to say anything to Dr. Langford or after the group? I know she already got her gift from us, but if anybody
And
wants
it's
to
lovely.
say
Thank you.
Hello. Hello again. I'm talking for all the group. I really want to thank you for all the time you took to prepare all the presentation. You really learn from emotional intelligence, how to get involved with group, how to communicate with the team, and everything you told us today. And we are really thankful for that. Thank you very much for your time.
I'm very thankful to have met all of you. Thank you.